Hello, friends. Today we will discuss a play by Eugene O'Neill, The Hairy Ape. So, before discussing the novel, we will discuss some biographical detail of the writer. Widely considered America's greatest playwright, Eugene O'Neill was born on 16 October 1888 in an uptown family hotel named Barrett House on Broadway at 43th Street, New York. His father, James O'Neill, was a famous actor and his mother was a fan of music. So, Eugene O'Neill's father was often on tour, and Eugene grew up with an awareness of and an appreciation for the theater. He started his undergraduate studies at Harvard University but left after a year to move to New York City. He first harnessed his abilities as a playwright on Cape Cod with the Provincetown Players in 1916. The Provincetown Players had theatre in Provincetown and Greenwich Village, and they frequently produced O'Neill's work. Neill's plays were among the first to include speeches in American English vernacular and involve characters on the fringes of society. They struggled to maintain their hopes and aspiration, but ultimately slide into disillusionment and despair. Of his very few comedies, only one is well known, O Wilderness. Nearly all of his other plays involve some degree of tragedy and personal pessimism. During the 1920s, he was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for three of his plays Beyond the Horizon, Anne Christie, Strange Interlude. Other popular successes, including The Emperor Jones, The Hairy Ape, Desire Under the Elms, The Great Court Brown, and Morning Becomes Electra, brought him international acclaim. In 1936, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature, the only American playwright to be so honored. He was awarded a fourth Pulitzer Prize posthumously in 1956 for Long Day's Journey into Night. In a career which spanned 3 decades, Eugene O'Neill changed the American theater forever. Until Eugene O'Neill's arrival on the scene, American theatrical production was largely made up of European imports and native productions, the latter mostly shallow melodramas and farces. But he changed all that with such stunningly original and dramatic works. In spite of his success, O'Neill had an unhappy personal life, with marital struggles and estranged relationships with his children. Additionally, he suffered from alcoholism and depression. In 1936, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and in 1953, he died at the age of 65 in an hotel in Boston. So, now we will discuss the play The Hairy Ape, and in this play, we will discuss Expressionism, important characters of the play, summary and critical study of the play, and after that, the conclusion. Expressionism. It is a movement in literature and painting, centering in Germany in the first quarter of the 20th century. Expressionism is not a well defined movement, as its central feature is a revolt against the artistic and literary tradition of realism, both in subject matter and in style. The expressionistic artist or writer undertakes to express a personal vision, usually a troubled emotional vision of human life and of human society. Often, the work implies that what is described represents the experience of an individual standing alone and afraid in an industrial, technological, and urban society which is disintegrating into chaos. By using the expressionistic technique, the dramatist was able to show inner psychological realities. O'Neill was deeply influenced by the moment. So now we have some important characters of the play. And this play, Yank, the protagonist of the play, a stoker who works on a large ocean liner. Paddy, an experienced old Irish man who works alongside Yank on the ocean liner. Paddy is depressed about the miserable condition of the stock hole, frequently complaining about how rushed it is to work below deck. Long, a stoker who tries to get Yank to see the nature of his own oppression under the rule of capitalism and industrialization. Mildred Douglas, the entitled daughter of the president of Najarat Steel, a man who also served as the chairman to the board of directors that controls the ocean liner upon which Yank Paddy Long worked. And the next character is Mildred's aunt, an old woman whom O'Neill describes as pompous and proud. Mildred's aunt is highly critical of her niece's desire to work with poor people. Second engineer, a middle-aged engineer who works on the ocean liner. After Mildred convinces the captain of the ship to let her visit the Stockholm, this man is charged with escorting her. The IWW secretary, the secretary at the office of the Industrial Workers of the World Union that Yanks visit. At first, the secretary warmly welcomes Yank and gives him pamphlets explaining the ins and outs of the organizations. However, Yank soon reveals that he is joining the union because he mistakenly believes they will help him blow up Najaret Steel. And now we have summary of the play. The firemen, workers who shovel coal into the engine of the transatlantic ocean liner sit in the forecastle of the ship, drinking and carrying on with each other. The men are muscular. Yank sits in the foreground quietly, long, quiet trunk, stands up and makes a Marxist speech, preaching to the men that if the ship is home, their home is hell, and the upper class put them there. Paddy, a wise older fireman, tells the man that life on an ocean liner is hell by comparison to his life on a clipper ship. Paddy thinks about the freedom he enjoyed, the purpose he had, and skill for which he was valued. Yank tells Paddy that he is dead, living in the past of dreams, and glorifies his own job as the strength of the ship's speed and force. Mildred and her aunt are on the deck of the ocean liner. Mildred and her aunt discuss Mildred's need to service for the poor. Her aunt characterizes Mildred's service as slumming and does not understand why she has to do it. Mildred's aunt tells Mildred that her service work just makes the poor feel more poorer. Mildred is currently waiting for the second engineer to take her down into the stock hall. She told a lie that her father, the president of Najaris Steel, has given her permission. The second engineer escorts Mildred, who is in a white dress, goes down into the stock hall. Yank and the men are hard at work, shawling coal in the noisy stock hall at the opening of the scene 3. Yank leads the man at the work. The men take a break, and an anonymous whistleblower overheard in the darkness command the man to keep working. In a rage, Yank screams up at the whistleblower. Yank suddenly realizes that the men have stopped working. Still fuming, Yank turns to face Mildred. At the sight of Yank, Mildred shouts for the man to take her away from the filthy beast and faints. The men have again gathered in the stock hall in scene 4. They mock Yank, the filthy beast. Paddy tells Yank. Mildred looked at him like he was a big hairy ape. This make this all makes Yank very angry and wants revenge now. Yank and Long have traveled to Fifth Avenue in New York City in St. Fifth. Long wants to show Yank that the all upper class people are like Mildred. Finally, Yank is arrested because he makes a gentleman miss his bus. Yank is imprisoned and converses with the other prisoners in scene 6. The man tells him that if he wants to get even with Mildred and her father's company, he should join the Industrial Workers of the World. As I earlier told you, IWW. Yank realizes that Mildred's father built both the physical and metaphorical cage he is trapped in. In a fury, Yank actually bends the bar of his cell. He is restrained by the guard. Yank visits the local IWW in scene 7, but is rejected because the secretary thinks he is governmental spy. Yank's radicalism, willingness to blow things up, and preoccupation with belonging make them suspicious of him. Yank is thrown out on the street. The next morning, Yank visits the zoo. And now, the next morning, Yank visits the zoo. In scene 8, Yank attempts to befriend the ape. He tells the ape that they are alike, both caged and taunted. Yank believes he and the ape belonging to the same club and calls him brother. Yank approaches the ape to shake his hand. The gorilla, the ape, crushes Yank with his massive arms. Yank dies in gorilla's cage. And now we have critical study of the play. You can interpret it. A critical study of Eugene O'Neill's The Hairy Ape brings to light some interesting and enlightening fact about O'Neill's technique. Here, the playwright has employed the expressionistic technique without abandoning the realistic mode. The realistic technique has been employed to serve non realistic purposes. The writer has employed realism in the setting of the opening scene. The Stoker have been realistically depicted. Yank is the central character and more powerful than the rest. All other Stoker respect his superior strength. The proud and confident Yank, who labors under the illusion that he belongs and enjoys respectability as he performs his duty very well, but the poor fellow does not know or realize that while he is working, the ground under his feet is dipping away, and the world around him is leaving him stranded and taking him his rights and respect. He finds that he does not belong and counts for nothing. The problem of Yank is not Yanks alone, but it is the problem of every stoker for that matter of all workers. Yank and other workers like him find themselves abandoned on the sidewalk of the world, ignored, humiliated, and unprotected. They are hated and despised. The rapid growth of industrialization has transformed and revolutionized the world, and the American society is no exception. So Young's confidence is shaken and he becomes obsessed with the sense of alienation, and description expresses his sense of bewilderment, fear, and horror. There are some other characters who serve as a background to keep the protagonist in sharp focus. The other characters speak briefly and even in monosyllables, but their conversation is symbolic of their attitudes and reveal their feelings, bewilderment, confusion, and obsession. And the scene and the scenes are also probing the subconscious of the central character. There is no logical sequence in scenes. Much is left to imagination of the audience. The sense of isolation and feeling of lack of belongingness and identity is not an individual's problem but a collective and universal problem of the machine is. As it happens to Yank is happening to millions, and it shows that the contemporary world has become a cultural and spiritual wasteland now. Conclusion. Thus, it can be said that The Hairy Ape is a masterpiece of O'Neill's dramatic art and craft. This drama condemns the dehumanizing effect of industrialization, as well as the destructive power of class hatred and ability of an uncaring society to crush the individual. So, Neil gave seriousness to the American drama. Anyone interested in American dramas or theaters will surely want to read this work by one of the greatest modern playwrights. So, here are some references. Thank you very much.